right, welcome everybody. It's a big crowd here today. We'll give it a minute to let people trickle in. But welcome, Sourcepass community. Good to see you turning out in full force today. So my name's Alan Bauman. I'm a regional VP with Sourcepass, and I'm also here with Jolynn Reen. If you've been on any of the previous webinars, you've experienced Jolynn. She's an excellent instructor, somebody I've worked with for years and years. Jolynn, our topic today is Excel, and
yes,
every time we run an Excel class, somebody comments says, well, people already know how to use Excel. Why do you need to have an Excel class? And I tell you, I think it never fails that these Excel classes are among the most popular classes that we do.
oh, they sure are, because people don't realize that there are some things in the application that seriously have not changed for years, but we never knew how to use them. We just never took the time. We go in and we do our data entry, we do our formulas, and that's as far as we take it. But today we're going to actually see some efficiencies that can really help you with that day-to-day activity.
I count myself in that first bucket where, you figure out how to navigate Excel, which I did, many years ago, which I will not disclose that number, but a long time ago. And I just know my way through the program. It gets me where I need to go. But I know every time we do one of these sessions, I pick up another shortcut or quicker, easier way of doing something.
Good.
So it's always good stuff. So great to see so many people here. This is part of our learning series of webinars. I think this is our fourth one. These webinars are monthly, and really the focus here is to help you use the tools that you probably already have in a better, more efficient, more productive way. A lot of Office 365 content as we have here today. So this is open to anybody who is a client of Sourcepass. If you have colleagues that you work with who are not signed up that you think might be interested in this webinar, certainly share this with them. Future webinars, share that with them. This webinar, as with all of them, will be recorded, and that recording will be sent to you if you've registered for this webinar within the next couple days. To register for any upcoming event, all of that's on our website at sourcepass.com/events. And we also do have a digital transformation series of webinars. So whereas this is really more about the nitty gritty, help me use the tools I already have, digital transformation is about new technologies and maybe ways of doing things with the tech that you have or could have in ways that are helpful to your business and have impact your business. So different focuses, maybe different audiences, but just be aware of those as well. We'll go through the list of upcoming webinars at the end of this session, just so you have a bit of a preview, but I think we've got them scheduled out through the middle of the summer at this point. So just a real quick little bit of nitty gritty here, and then we'll turn it over to Jolynn and let her get going. So if you have any questions, just like all these webinar platforms, use the Q&A button. We'll either answer those directly, or if the question is a broader audience, we'll pose those to Jolynn and we'll answer those live. And we would also, as we always do, would love to get your feedback on the session today. Kat will be sending out a survey, probably along with that link to the recording within the next couple days. Love to have you fill out the survey. Tell us what you like, what you think we could do better. If there's topics that you'd like us to cover, this is the place to do it. We read them all, and they all definitely have an impact on how we fill out the schedule. So Jolynn, I'm excited for the session today, and yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you run with it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate it. So as Alan said, welcome to our session Beyond the Basics here with Microsoft Excel. The first topic that I really want to start with is named ranges. So we all know that when you're using Excel, you're most likely going to be creating some type of a formula. And one of the things that I don't think I took advantage of when I first started using Excel, which was when it was first released, I didn't realize that I needed some efficiencies on not only creating formulas, but as Excel grew and grew as an application, there were some other things that were put into the application that we can take advantage of with named ranges. So a name is basically the name of the cell that you are actively on. So when I look at my workbook that I'm showing you right now, at the top left, underneath the ribbon, we have this name box. And most of us know that when you click on a cell, it always gives you the name of your active cell. But there's a lot more to that box. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't even realize what that down arrow is for. So this name box has a down arrow. If you click the down arrow, it will actually show you any of your current named ranges that are available in your workbook, or it will show you any tables that you have within your workbook. I have a generic table. It's generic only because of the name of it. It says table 1. So a little bit later, I'm going to talk about how to create a table. When you create a table, the name of the table ends up being a named range. If you don't physically give it a name, it's actually generically named table 1, table 2, just like we have with our book 1, book 2, or sheet 1, sheet 2. Tables and pivot tables do that exact same thing. So a lot of things can be named. So naming a cell or a range of cells shouldn't be any surprise because of all the other naming conventions. So we're going to walk through the benefits, some of them today, as to why you would want to name a cell or a range of cells, and we'll walk through what the rules are for naming. So first, the rules. I won't talk about very many, but the big thing is when you go to name something, you can't have any spaces in the name. You can't name it the same as a cell reference either. So in that case, I couldn't name a cell or a range of cells QTR1 because QTR1 is actually a cell because we have over 16,000 columns across and over 1,048,576 rows going down. So lots of space per worksheet. By
Hey, Jolynn.
yes.
Sorry to interrupt here. Just a couple comments that the screen is looking a little bit small.
Oh,
Maybe if you could zoom in a little bit.
absolutely. I can zoom in like this, and let me zoom in one more way to see if this will help everybody a little bit. Give me uno momento. I want to resize that screen. Let me leave you on this slide while I'm changing my screen resolution here and see if that will help you. Okay, so that should be better. Hopefully everybody can see that better.
Looks like we've gotten some positive feedback on that, Jolynn.
Okay,
so
good.
Let
you.
us
I
know
appreciate that.
if that still isn't working for folks.
Okay. So I did make my mouse bigger on purpose so that people can follow my mouse too. So hopefully that helps. But when it comes to naming these cells, we can't name it the same as a cell reference. You can use uppercase, lowercase. If you want to separate words or something, you can separate with an underscore, or I just use uppercase, lowercase. But technically, you can name a cell up to 255 characters. So what am I talking about when it comes to naming a cell? Well, instead of referring to it by its column letter, row number, you can give it an actual name that describes what exactly it is. The example I'm going to use first is going to be my cell G2. G2 has a commission rate. I'm going to want to do a formula using G2. I'm going to do a formula here in column G for each of these salespeople to configure their commission rate. And I want to create the first one and then copy it down for everybody else. Now, I only have a few employees on this list to make it easy, but could you imagine if you had 1,000? You're definitely going to want to copy the formula. And when you have a formula that you want to refer to a single cell, you may have used dollar signs in the past. Dollar signs, which is called an absolute reference, you could use dollar signs to lock a cell down. But the problem with that is, what if somebody else looks at that? And I have to say I'm guilty of this. I remember when I first started with Excel and I saw dollar signs in a formula, I thought it was formatting the number. I thought it was a currency format. Okay, that was a long time ago. Now I know that it was locking the cell down, but a lot of people get confused by it. So let's make it easier, not just for them, but for yourself as well by using a named range. Named ranges are an absolute reference by default. So we don't have to worry about dollar signs. Let me show you an example. So I'm going to name G2, I'm going to give it an actual name of commission rate. By clicking in the name box, I can physically type what I want to name it, then press enter. So I'm going to name it, oops, I have to spell it correctly, commission rate. No spaces in the name. Once I'm done, I press enter. That cell is not called G2 for this worksheet anymore. It's called commission rate. I'm going to use it in a formula and then copy it down so you can see the benefit of this. So I'm going to do a typical equal. I'm going to say I want to take their total sales. I want to multiply it, but I want to multiply it by commission rate. As soon as I start typing CO, it narrows the list down of all the functions that begin with those letters. But of course, the functions will have a circle with the FX next to it. But you'll notice commission rate has the squares, the blue highlighted squares as well. So anytime you see that, you know it's a named range if you see the squares. I'm going to double click commission rate. I'm going to control enter so I stay on the cell, because if I just press enter, I'll move down, then I have to go back up again. So now I have the commission rate. You can see it in the formula bar. It makes more sense to read it. It's easier to understand the formula if we are using a named range. Now, all I have to do is copy it down for the other employees. And of course, I would double click on the fill handle if I were copying it down for 1,000. But I was just going a short distance, so I just clicked and drug it. And now everyone has the same formula. So the commission rate was copied down because it's an absolute reference. So that's a benefit. But let me give you another benefit with this. I'm going to go to the worksheet called sales. And let's say that I want to create a formula that's going to use that commission rate with some values here. So what I want to do is, I'm just on a blank cell. I'm going to say equal this cell multiplied by commission rate.
Hey, Jolynn,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you again. Just getting more feedback that the screen is still a little
Sure.
small. I don't know if maybe you can just use the...
No problem.
If we can get it as close to the full screen as we can.
I just zoomed in good.
That's looking similar to me.
Oh, that didn't help.
Yeah,
Because
maybe
I just changed my
the
screen resolution.
Yeah, maybe just the display settings at the bottom from 100%. Yep. Click it up a little bit.
Oops. So there we go. That will help on the data on the cells.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so basically what I did was I can create a formula on any worksheet within this workbook using that named range coming from that other sheet. So it can be used anywhere. That's another huge benefit. And if I needed to go back to the cell that I had named, an easy way to get there is to go to the name box. If I click on the name box drop-down arrow, I can click commission rate. It's going to automatically jump me back to the worksheet where that commission rate is. If I change the number for the commission rate, it updates every formula, regardless of where it is in the workbook. So it's going to update it absolutely everywhere. So named ranges is something that I highly recommend you use. But I'm going to give you another reason to use them. I'm going to go to this worksheet called company orders. I wish it would stay zoomed for every sheet I go to, sorry. But what I want to do here is I'm going to create a couple of formulas in a second. And I'm going to do these based on the extended price column. And it's over 1,400 rows down. I don't want to have to keep going back and selecting those cells. I'm going to name it instead. I'm going to click on I2. I'm going to do Shift Control down arrow. I'm at the bottom of that column. I'm going to scroll down so you can see I'm at the bottom of that list of all the extended prices. I'm going to click in the name box again. I'm going to name that range extended price. The reason I would want to do that is because then I can use the extended price and formulas, and I won't have to worry about going back and reselecting the ranges of cells again. Okay, just something to think about. Named ranges have a lot more benefits than what I'm talking about today. We could do another session another day that talks about the scenario manager and the other what if analysis tools. They take advantage of named ranges. Data validation does. There's a lot of different things. But anyway, let's continue with a few formulas, and I'll use some formulas actually on this sheet. So one of the formulas that I want to do is a subtotal. But first, I'm going to do a standard sum. So I'm going to go to K1, and I want to create a sum of all of those extended prices. I'm going to do a typical auto sum. So I just clicked the auto sum button. It gives me my equal sum, etc. I'm going to fill in the arguments as being the extended price. So if I do EX, I can double click on extended price. It selects that entire column. I'm going to control enter. It automatically gives me the sum of the extended price. That to me was a lot easier than trying to select. Sometimes if we click and drag to select, the computer kind of goes crazy on what it selects. So this is a much easier way. Plus, we can understand the formula better because when we look at the formula bar, it says sum of extended price. So it makes more sense. But I'm going to do another formula. I'm going to go to L1, and I'm going to create a subtotal function. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to add together those extended prices, but I'm just going to do it with a different type of function. And you'll see why I would want to do that here in just a second. So I'm going to create a subtotal by doing equal SU. I'm going to double click on subtotal, and I want it to give me the sum. And as you can see, it has these 1 through 11 of different types of functions that the subtotal can actually do. But I want sum, so I'm going to double click on 9-sum. I'm going to double click on 9-sum. It's basically a hidden code to the computer to let it know we want to perform a calculation based on a sum. The other argument it needs is what exactly are the range of cells you want to add together? Once again, it's going to be the extended price. So if I do the EX, I'm going to double click on extended price. It does exactly the same formula as I did with the sum. Exactly the same answer. Gives me the same exact calculation. So why would I ever do a subtotal? Well, a big reason for me is what if I need to filter my data? I'm going to be limiting what I'm seeing in this list of orders. These are basically some product orders with their invoice number, etc. And let's say I want to focus on just one salesperson. I'm going to actually turn on filtering, which is available on your data tab or your home tab. But when I'm analyzing data, I always go to the data tab. So I'm going to go to data. I'm going to click filter. It gives me my filter drop downs. So I can go to salesperson, click on the drop down. I will see a unique list of all of the salespeople. I'm going to uncheck the select all. I'm going to choose Andrew Fuller and click OK. It now is limiting the number of records that I'm looking at. As a matter of fact, my status bar at the bottom left is telling me there's 178 records out of 1,464 total. And my subtotal on L1 has now changed. A lot of times for me, I want a sum to know what the grand total is. This is giving me a subtotal of what I'm filtered based on. So the subtotal function is definitely something you will want to use if you haven't already. A lot of times I have a dashboard kind of a look, and when people are filtering their data and stuff, we need to see different values. So we're going to have a standard, sum, a standard average, the max, the min to get the largest, smallest type numbers. But I also have subtotals. I have subtotals based on the averages, subtotals also based on the sum of whatever my range of values is. So I use those a lot in my data analysis. But there's other functions that I want to mention as well that are very popular to use. Alan, did you have a question?
Yep,
Yep.
I do. Just before we move on. So the question is, can that be done for an entire column instead of just a range?
That so are we talking about column I, the whole entire column I?
It doesn't specify that, but I assume so.
So when you create a formula, keep in mind that a column includes rows 1 through 1,048,576. So if you're not technically going to have numbers going all the way down, we never want to do something specifically related to the whole entire column. Only the ranges of cells that have data. Only the range of cells that have data. If you're concerned about adding data, so what if I come in and I start adding some rows of orders and stuff? That range can be expanded, and which can expand the named range as well. If we use tables, that is actually a great way to do that. Let me explain what I'm talking about. I'm going to clear my filter. So let me clear my filter from salesperson. If I were seriously going to be doing information with these orders, I want to analyze this further. I usually would turn it into a table. So I'm going to do that by going to the Insert tab of the ribbon. I'm going to click Table. It knows my whole range of cells. I'm going to click OK. It is now a table where it's easier to analyze and add records of information. So I still have this named range, and let me kind of show you, it's still the extended price. Just because it's in a table doesn't change that, but the whole entire table is now a named range as well. When I look at so when I'm in this table, I have this table design tab on the ribbon. On the left-hand side, I can name this table. I'm going to name it company orders because it's a bunch of sales orders. So this is actually now a named range called company orders. So the whole thing is a named range. What if I come in and add some orders? If I come in and let's say that I'm going to just kind of insert a few rows here, and I'm going to add in a bunch of orders. And they're going to all be for around the horn. They're going to be based on the USA. And I'll just copy that down. And they're going to be based on the salesperson, Andrew Fuller. Just so you can see, I can be putting in this data to have available, and I'm just going to cheat here for a minute. I can be putting all this information in, and if I put in a unit price and I put in some quantities, I can start getting that extended price to also update, which is changing both of these values. Because I added in these additional orders, they automatically did update. Even though both of them are using the extended price, it automatically added these new rows. So I hope that helped with kind of the difference between don't use an entire column. We want to use ranges of cells instead. Okay, I hope that helped. You can always stay later and ask more questions on that if you want. But I'm going to actually jump to the worksheet called sales. And I want to talk about other types of functions that are very common, kind of beyond the basics though. The basics are going to be your sum, your average, your count, your max, your min. This is working with an if. There's several different types of if functions that we can do. Let me just give you an if first. I'm going to come back to this worksheet instead, and let me actually do something with the sales goal. So if I go to G1, I know this is already a named range because if I look at the name box, it's called sales underscore goal. So I'm going to use that in a formula. And let's say we want to know if their total has met their sales goal. So I'm going to put in here, did total meet the sales goal? So that's the question that we want to answer. We could get a yes or a no answer back. By using the if function, it looks for whatever we want to evaluate. It's called the logical test. Whatever we want to evaluate, and then if that is true, do this. But whatever we're evaluating, if it's false, we want it to do this. So it's a way that we can get a true or a false out of whatever we need to evaluate. So what I'm going to do is evaluate that F5 against the goal. So I'm going to do an equal, the letter I. I'm going to press my tab key for if. It comes up with my screen tip for what is my logical test, what if the value is true, and then the value if it's false. I'm simply going to click on my FX to do my formula. It's going to open up the function arguments window. The reason I opened this is because I don't like to type. I'm going to let the computer help me do some typing. So basically, the logical test is the first argument that we need to fulfill. And that's going to be, we want it to be looking at F5 to see if it is greater than or equal to sales goal. So G1, it's automatically putting that in the logical test as I clicked on the cells. And I can even see the answer is true. If I want something, if that is true, that logical test is true, maybe I want it to say the word yes. But if it's false, I want it to say no. Anytime that you're going to use text in a formula, outside of a function, of course, the functions don't need this, but anytime you're going to use text, it has to be in quotes. So by using this function arguments window, the computer is automatically going to put the quotes where the quotes are needed, and it's going to put the commas to separate the arguments. All I have to do is click OK. It's automatically going to give me the answer of yes. I can now, of course, copy that formula down for all of the other employees, and you're going to see that they're all no. Everybody else is no because they did not match their sales goal. So this formula was smart enough when I copied it down, of course, to change the row number, but it automatically used sales goal every single time because it was a named range. Okay, Alan, did you have somebody with a question?
Yep, a quick question, kind of a general question. What's the benefit of adding data to a table?
Oh my goodness, yes. So when we were talking about this company orders, the reason that I added rows of data to this was because this is going to continue to grow. You know, we're going to continue to have more and more information that needs to be added to it. So rows can get added, but with a table, I can even add additional columns. So you're going to add additional rows of information. And by the way, I did it at the top of the table. What if I go to the bottom of the table? If I add in a new record at the bottom, because maybe I imported it from my AS400 or my ERP system, or I copied and pasted it, it can automatically add it to the table. So I'm going to come down and just add a new one. So I'm going to say it's USA. It's going to be Andrew Fuller. This is the order number. This is the order date. And I'm ordering product name. I don't know if that was in there. I ordered this many of them. It's going to give me my, oh, that was really high priced. Crab is high, but just so you can see, it's automatically adding everything up for me. And it added this new row to be a part of the table. So it automatically extends the table as we keep adding additional rows. So even if I just copy and paste a row, just so you could see, that has been added to this table. So we're going to continue to add to it. and anything that you're doing with it is going to automatically be available. Now you'll notice if I look at these extended prices here, I want to point out these formulas, and I should have pointed them out before I did that, because earlier I inserted the rows. Here I went to the bottom and added. Did that add those additional rows at the bottom? If you're not sure if it did, let me show you something. I'm going to actually go to the Formulas tab of the ribbon. And by the way, anytime you add to a range of data, if you add in the middle of it, things will update. If you add to the bottom, they don't, just so you know. I'm going to go to this group here called Defined Names. I'm going to click on Name Manager. This is where we go to see all of the existing name ranges. We can delete them, we can edit them. So I'm going to look at the one that we did called Extended Price. I'm going to double click on it. We can see it goes through rows 1472. 1472. I'm going to close that. I'm going to Control End and jump down 1472. So things can be added when you are in a table. Things can be updated automatically. So we will continue to always be, changing our information as we work. Okay, I hope that helped. Alan, let me know if they have any follow-ups on that.
Yep, will do.
Okay. So I want to go back and do a couple more formulas real quick. I'm going to go back to the sales department again, the sales worksheet here. And what I want to do is create a formula using another if function. But the one I'm actually going to do is called SUMIF. What I want to do is analyze the information based on the East region. So I've got this Outlander Spices sales analysis. It's got a store code, it's got a region, current year, prior year. And what I want to get is the total sales for the prior year, but only for the region East. To do that, I'm going to use a SUMIF, where it's only going to add the numbers together if it matches the criteria. So I'm going to do equal SU. From the list of functions, I'm going to double click on SUMIF. From here, you can see that it's looking for what is the range you want me to evaluate, what is the criteria, and then what is the range of cells for the sum. What do you want me to actually add together? I'm going to click FX. Only because I call it my helper window, I don't like to type much. So for the range, I'm going to select the region. Now, by the way, if I were going to be doing a lot of formulas on this, I would have named that column region. I never would have selected the cells. The criteria is going to be the word East. I wanted to look at that range of that region column, and I wanted to only find the cells that have East. Then for the sum range, I wanted to add together the prior year sales. So I select, once again, I should have done it as named ranges. I selected the prior year column. So the criteria is the word East. So what it's going to do is look across to see if it says East of the region, it's going to go to the prior year and add those numbers together. So basically what it just added together were these values. So these are all of the cells that have East. So when I select these numbers, my total down on my status bar here for the sum actually matches with the answer I got. So we can say, add these numbers together, but only the ones that match this criteria. Okay. Let me give you another example. I'm going to say that I want to do the average of the current year numbers. So if the current year number is in the East region, I want to get an average. I can do that by using the AVERAGEIF function. Alan, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to drill down in a little bit more detail, are the cells case sensitive? So in other words, if we used East with a lowercase e, would it be the same thing?
That is a really great question, and I should have pointed that out. Notice when I typed the formula, I didn't put a capital. It doesn't care. So capital is not required, doesn't match casing. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So the function that we're going to do this time is going to be an average if. So if I start typing AV, I can double click on average if. It's just like doing a sum if. We have to give it the range, we have to give it the criteria, then what is the range of cells we want to get the average of? This one I'll just physically type. Now, once again, I have to go back and select the range I wanted to evaluate is going to be B7 through B21. If I had hundreds of cells, 100% naming the ranges would be what I would do. So I'm going to put in my range, comma, I'm going to put in my criteria, which is the word east, but because I'm typing it, I have to use the quotes around the word east. And then I'm going to put in another comma to separate the arguments. And it wants to know what is the average range. So what is the range that I want to get the average of? I'm going to select the current year range. When I'm done, I'm going to Control Enter. So the nice thing about this is if the criteria changes for that region, it's going to automatically update any of the formulas, because if it doesn't say east, or what if one of these that was north becomes the east region, because we kind of mixed up our regions now and this one is going to become east region. If I change this to be east, it's going to update both those formulas. It's going to change what it's adding together and what it's giving us an average of. So these are the types of functions that I like to use on a very regular basis. I think that these are easy to understand once you've practiced a little bit. If you haven't done these before, they can actually be easy to use, but practice a little bit. Use some data that you're familiar with, but definitely practice. So let me give you another example. I'm going to actually do a count of stores that are over a target that are East region. So stores over target is what I'm going to be answering. And what I'm actually going to do is I want to know how many of the stores based on the East region have a current year total of 15,000 or more. So I want the region to be East. The current year has to be 15,000 or more. I just want to count how many match those two criterias. What I am going to use is called COUNTIFS. It's a function called COUNTIFS. So it's going to count if it matches the criteria, but the S at the end is for multiple criterias. So it has to match the region and the number has to be greater than or equal to 15,000. So I'm going to do equal IF, double click on if S. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot I'm doing a count. I'm going to do a COUNTIFS. So COU, I'm going to double click on COUNTIFS. You can see that the screen tip that you're getting is a little confusing sometimes. So I'm going to click FX so we can break apart the arguments. By default, it's only going to give you the criteria range 1 and then the criteria 1. So what is the first criteria range of cells we want to evaluate? That's going to be the region. So once again, I'm going to select region. And then the criteria is going to be the word East. It's automatically adding the criteria range 2. Alan, did somebody have a question?
Yep. So the question is, if there was a named range, would you just put the name of that range in the first part of the formula instead of the actual cell addresses?
Yes, 100%. Let me show you a quick way to do that. So I'm going to select B6 through D21. I'm including the labels up at the top of each column. I'm going to name all 3 of these ranges, these columns, based on row 6. by going to the Formulas tab of the ribbon. In this Defined Names group, I'm going to click Create from Selection, meaning I want the computer to create named ranges for each of these 3 columns based on the labels in the top. It automatically thinks the top row should be used and the left because they're both text. I'm going to uncheck left column. I'm going to click OK. So now we have 3 more named ranges. If I go to the name box, you can see that we now have current year, prior year, and region. Region is this range. So now I could have my formulas all be using those named ranges. Now I'm going to go back and do this formula and use the named range instead of selecting them. So I'm going to do that equal COUNTIF, equal COUNTIF. I'm going to click on the FX to use my function arguments window. My first range is going to be region. My criteria is going to be the word East. Now, by the way, I just typed region. It didn't have to be a capital R like I had named it with. And then, of course, East isn't capitalized either, just so you could see. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to do the S. My apologies. I was going to do a COUNTIF S. So I have multiple criterias. The one that I was on was only one criteria. Sorry. Let me go back. So same thing. I'm going to do region. I'm going to do East. Oops, I have to spell East correctly or it won't find it. It automatically adds another criteria range because I'm going to do more than one criteria. This time it's going to be the current year. If I don't know for sure, does that have a named range? You know, so if I don't remember if it does, I can actually press my F3. F3 function key is going to bring up a list of your named ranges. So I need the current year. I can double click on it so I don't have to type it. And then I just need to put in the criteria 2, which is going to be greater than equal 15,000. So what this formula is doing, I'll kind of go back to the top again. I'm telling the computer to count the number of cells that match 2 criterias. The first one is the region has to be the word East, and the current year has to have a number that is greater than or equal to 15,000. I could add another criteria because I'm doing COUNTIF S, but I'm just going to click OK. There's only 4 that match that criteria. So let me point out, these are the East, and these are the numbers just for the East that have, so let me highlight those just so you can see that. I'll highlight them in a different color here. So you can see that there's only these. Oops, I missed one. I forgot I changed this one to East. So these 4 cells are matching both the criteria of being East in the region and having a number in the current year that is greater than or equal to 15,000. So these types of functions work very well for analyzing your data, to be able to say, I only want it if this. So lots of different if functions. I could spend all day just talking about different types of functions that are great for analyzing data, but these are going to be some of your more common usage. But I do want to do another function here. I want to actually go to this employee departments list. So this is basically a list of a bunch of employees at the company, Outlander Spices. And what we want to do is from row 5 down, we want to be able to analyze this data and pull out specific information, which, by the way, this worksheet for this employee departments could be someplace else. I'm going to use what is called an XLOOKUP. I'm going to use an XLOOKUP, and what I want it to do is to find the last name of whatever employee ID number I type in on cell B2. I wanted to put their last name on C2, but I also want to get their first name and their department. With this function called XLOOKUP, which is relatively new, it just came out in 365 a year or so ago. I'm trying to remember how long it's been. It hasn't been too long. But first, Alan, did you have a question from someone?
Oh, no, I don't actually,
Okay.
Jolyn.
Okay, I just wanted to check there. So what I'm going to do is tell the computer I wanted to look up this employee ID, and it can be any employee ID, by the way, any employee ID out of our employees. I wanted to automatically populate this information about that employee. So it's going to go to this database of range of cells and find that information. Now, this is where, once again, I would most likely be naming my ranges because I want to make sure that it's going to be able to find the correct information. So I'm going to name the ranges for the employee ID, last name, first name. I want to name those cells so that oh, sorry. Let me jump back up there. I actually want to do department as well. So I want to do all 4 of these. I'm going to name all of these. So once I have those selected, I'm going to go back to my formulas tab. In that defined names group, I'm going to click create from selection. I just want to use the top row to name these ranges. I'm going to click OK. So now I have these last name column is named, first name, department, etc. I can then use them in the formula. So I'm going to start on C2. I'm going to start with equal X. I'm going to double click on XLOOKUP. Just a little bit on XLOOKUP here as I describe what the arguments are for this. I used to use HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP. H for horizontal, V for vertical. I don't use either one of those anymore because the XLOOKUP does both. Plus, it has built-in error capabilities, which I'll show you how that works. So I have completely gone away from the other lookup functions and I'm exclusively using XLOOKUP. So if this is something that you haven't used yet, you still are using VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP, highly recommend practicing with this instead. It's super easy, it's smart. Plus we had some limits with the other ones. With this example, when we look at this employee information, it doesn't care if the employee ID column, which is the cell we want it to look up, it doesn't matter if it's to the right, to the left, or where it is. It does matter if you're doing a V or an H lookup, but X, it doesn't care. It just has to be within the same data source. That's the only criteria. So let me explain the arguments. And I'm just going to hand type this in just so you can see. I'm going to do what is the lookup value. We want to look up B2. That's the cell. I want it to look up this employee ID number, comma, it wants to know what is the lookup array. Basically, that means where is it going to find the actual employee ID number we're looking up. I'm going to start typing an E. I'm going to tell it to look in the employee ID column. That's where it's going to find that ID number we're looking up, comma, the return array. What is the range of cells we want the computer to return? If I only want it to return the last name, I'll do that one first. I'll say I just want it to find the last name. I can actually put in the named range last name. Okay, so I said I just want to find this employee ID number's last name. I could stop right there. I could control enter and it's automatically going to find that person's ID or last name based on their ID number. That's pretty easy. I could have done that with a VLOOKUP actually, but an XLOOKUP has more to it. If I wanted to tell it to utilize multiple answers instead of just the last name, I'm going to edit this formula. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to get rid of last name. And I'm going to say, I want you to actually give us the answer from the last name, the first name, and the department all at one time. We have to actually select the range of cells that it's referring to. So it needs to have that complete range of cells. So I'm going to select the range, and I didn't name that entire range, by the way. I'm going to select the range that I wanted to find for the last name, first name, department. Then I'm going to continue this formula. I'm going to put in a comma, and it says, if not found. So we can build into this XLOOKUP, if it doesn't find the employee ID number out of that column of employee ID numbers, if it's not there, do we want to give it an error? Because if you don't, and that employee can't be found, it's going to give you a hashtag error. Here, I'm going to say employee not found. That's the value I want it to return. I'm going to Control Enter. And it automatically has found the first name, the last name, first name, and it found their department. So by using an XLOOKUP, I don't have to do 3 separate formulas like I would if I did the VLOOKUP. XLOOKUP did all 3 of those columns at once, just by looking up that employee ID number out of that data range. But what if this employee number isn't valid? It's simply going to return employee not found. If I did that with a VLOOKUP, I'd have to add if error to a nested function with the VLOOKUP. So it would have been more complicated, which is harder to troubleshoot and things like that. Here, the troubleshooting is all done in one swoop with one function. It is, to me, the best thing that Microsoft has done in a while. Absolutely love things like this because it's more intelligent and it's easier for us to create. Less work for us, and that's what I want, less work. So if you haven't tried XLOOKUP, highly recommend that you do that. I'm going to do one more function with you. I'm going to go back to the dates worksheet, and from here what I want to do is I want to create a formula giving me today's date. And with that, I'm going to use a named range because I want to use it in a formula. So I'm going to do a formula to give me today's date by doing equal TO. I'm going to double click on today. If you have not used this function before, it has no arguments to it. It feeds off of the computer date, and it's always going to return whatever is your current date. So it's equal today, left, right. Control Enter, and we will see today's date. I'm going to name that cell so that I can use it in a formula and copy it down for all of the employees. So I'm going to click in the name box. I'm going to name it today's date. No spaces. I'm going to press enter after I type the name in. And now I'm going to use it in column F to calculate out the years of service that each of the employees have given to the company. And I'm going to be utilizing this date of hire. I'm going to use 2 functions. I'm going to use the same function twice, actually. I'm going to start out with equal Y. I'm going to use the year function because I want years of service, not days of service. I'm going to say equal year today's date. I wanted to take today's date and give us the year. I'm going to close that off at the right paren. That's the first part of the formula. I wanted to look at today's date and subtract the year from their data hire. So once again, I'm going to do another year function. This time it's going to be D4. Close that off at the right paren. So really, we're just saying take the year from this date minus the year from this date and give us how many years of service. I'm going to control enter. Because it's a date function, it comes back with a date answer. But we can always change the formatting by going to the Home tab to the number group and change it to general. So this first employee has given the company 39 years. I'm going to double click to copy that formula down, and I can do that because it was using a named range. For E1, instead of having it be E1 with dollar signs, I named the cell just to kind of practice with that named range so that we would be able to copy it down for each employee. So pretty cool that we can do that. But the last thing I want to leave you with here today is a feature called Flash Fill. If you have not used this feature yet, pay attention. This is one of my most favorite things that Excel does these days. I'm going to go to column H, and we want to have the computer populate all of the extensions for the employees. The extension number is part of column G. In column G, it's the last four numbers. So this first employee, Erica Becker, has an extension of 2099. I'm going to type that in H1, 2099. I'm going to control enter. When I control enter, I can see the number that I physically typed, but I want the computer to follow my pattern. So I'm going to go to the data tab of the ribbon. In the data tools group, I'm going to click the icon Flash Fill. What that does is looks at that number and says, hey, wait, I see that number. It looks to the left, looks to the right, and it says, I assume this person wants me to copy it all the way down for everybody. So it automatically did that. That's called Flash Fill. It follows whatever pattern we give it. I'm going to do an example of the building. Coming from column G, we want it to automatically populate lab, central, HQ, etc., going all the way down. Once again, I'm going to give it the first one, lab. I'm going to control enter. I'm going to click Flash Fill, and it follows our pattern all the way down through all of these employees and automatically fills it all in. That to me is pretty cool. But one more. It is very cool, actually. And I'm going to go to A4, and I want the first name of and last name of every employee. I want it to be first name space last name. In column B, we have the last name. In column C, we have the first name, and they're uppercase. We want them to be proper casing. We can give the computer the first one with the standard casing that we want it to use. Flash Fill will fill them all in and follow that casing. So I'm going to type Erica space Decker, and I'm just capitalizing the first letter of both those names. I'm going to control enter. I'm going to click Flash Fill, and it follows the pattern and fills in all of those all the way down. I hope you were saying ooh or ah to that, because that is actually super cool that it can do that. So instead of having to use text-related formulas to do this, it is now built in with this feature called Flash Fill. So it can combine information together from multiple cells or extract information. Alan, did you like that feature?
That is my takeaway for today, Jolynn. Thank you. Your streak is unbroken. I always get a great tip. That's amazing. I love that.
I love that one.
So we do have a couple questions, and if anybody out there has more questions, send them in now. We'll stay until they're all answered.
Yes.
But here are the two that we have now. And the first one is really referring to the XLOOKUP function.
Oh, yes.
And the question is, what if multiple rows match the criteria?
Then it takes the first one by default.
Okay.
Always takes the first one by default. But you know how Excel does rounding? So if it's numbers, a VLOOKUP and different things will go down to the next one because it does true by default. XLOOKUP can do whatever you want it to do. So it can look to the next lowest, the next closest match, or it can actually go to the next highest number with an XLOOKUP. So it's even smarter than what I described today. Okay.
Okay, next question. And this has to do with the if function that you covered up at the top of the call. So the question is about using the if function to change the formatting. So rather than, put the word yes in a column, could we simply use the if statement to turn the one of the total, let's say the total column, a different color? So it would be red if they were beneath the target and green if it was above the target. I know we can use conditional formatting for that.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if the if statement was another way to do that.
No, the if isn't going to technically be useful in that respect. You would want to use that conditional formatting because you want to control them as separate features. So highly recommend using the conditional formatting in that example. So we could basically just say that, and let me kind of show you here. So when I'm looking at this number, I could go to my conditional formatting and I really could just say top bottom rules. I could go to highlight cell rules and I could say, if it's greater than this number, do this color. So if it's greater than, I should have said greater than and equal, but that's okay. I'll just leave red for right now for that number. Actually, let me put in the right number. So it's 6,500. So only one of them would match that. I could do that same thing to have a different number if it's less than, and I would give it that same number, 6,500, but I would give it a different color just so you could see you could change the color. So if it's greater than this color, less than this color, it can do that. We can do a little bit with conditional formatting formulas to do that as well.
Great.
Okay.
Yep, I know that's one I use all the time. And then the last comment, this is a great one to end on, is just simply that flash fill is amazing. I think we can all agree on that.
I hope that person was doing the ooh ah that I do, because it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe it just did that.
Yep, great. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about upcoming webinars. And thank you, Jolynn, by the way. Always an interesting session here with you. So we've got a few that are coming up here later on in May. This is part of the digital transformation series that we spoke about. Copilot readiness assessment. A lot of you probably know that Copilot is Microsoft's AI product, really just kind of getting out into the world. This would be a really interesting session if you're considering using Copilot or just want to know more about Copilot, and if you're prepared to actually implement it in your organization. It's going to be a great session. The next two learning series webinars we have in June and July. June, we've got Microsoft Outlook Beyond the Basics, another one where everybody thinks they know everything about a product and it just turns out you don't. That's a great one. I certainly would encourage folks to attend that. And then in July, getting started with Microsoft Planner. And this is an application that a lot of people don't use, maybe aren't really aware of. So this is a kind of more of a basic session to kind of orient you to what this is.
And plus, Ellen, it just changed.
Okay. So just now
so
that
highly recommend attending to see what's new.
Yeah, now that we've learned the old one, we'll have to learn the new one. All right, so that's what we have coming up. And as always, if you have any questions about any of the content in the webinar today, just reach out to us. If you know who your customer success manager is, you can certainly reach out to them. Or if you don't know that, you can just send us an email at events@sourcepass.com. We'll make sure that it gets routed to the right place and that you get the help that you need. So yeah, thank you to the Sourcepass community for such a great showing today. I know that I got something out of this, and I'm sure that you all did too. So thank you again, Jolynn, and we'll see you all here next time.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.